Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, hi everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Sharvin here from MLC Penang, and this is my partner Navita from MLC Penang too. So now we are going to present the testing and evolution. So the first one we are going to see is the introduction, which is the introduction is describe how assessment in Malaysia has evolved. It also explains the shift from older system like the traditional primary school education test to more modern primary school standard, which is KSSR. The system focuses on holistic learning and uses school-based assessment such as PBS to measure students' performance more comprehensively. Then the purpose of the report is also stated to compare past and present assessment practice in Malaysia and show how they have changed support a more learner-centered approach in the year. Okay. So next I will pass to Navita.
So my part is historical overview. Uh, so what Malaysia education system was like before the introduction of KSSR in 2011. Before KSSR, our education system was very exam oriented. Students were mostly judged based on their exam result, especially the national exam called UPSR. In school, teaching was mostly teacher center. The teacher talked and the students listen and memorize everything just to pass exam. There was not much room in creativity or fun learning. At that time, assessment were only done towards written exam at the end of the year. There were no project or group activities to check student progress. Because of this, many students feel lot of pressure and stress. They study long hours and went for extra tuition just to score well mark. Some even lost interest in learning because it's become all about exam. In short, before KSSR, the education system focused too much on exam and not enough on developing students' creativity, confidence, and life skills. That's why KSSR was introduced to make learning more balanced, enjoyable, and meaningful for every student.
Good afternoon to my fellow students, fellow colleagues, to my lecturer, as well as my friends. So, as for today, I'm here to present about the latest assignment we did for testing and evaluation with my co-partners. Okay, my part is current assessment practices under KSSR. Okay, the first segment is current assessment practices under KSSR, implemented in 2011 to align with 21st century education goals. It shifted from exams to continuous holistic learning. School-based assessment (PBS) became the main evaluation system, reduced exam pressure from UPSR, emphasized values and soft skills. Okay, so the introduction of KSSR in 2011 changed the philosophy of teaching and learning in Malaysian primary schools. Why? Because the curriculum promotes a student-centered learning and holistic approach that focuses on developing of knowledge, skill, as well as values. Okay, assessment under KSSR is conducted through school-based assessment, PBS, which means Pentaksiran berasaskan sekolah system, which also includes both formative and summative assessment. Okay, formative assessment conducted during Malaysians to monitor students' progress. Teacher use results to adjust teaching methods, focuses on feedbacks, not grades, encourages students to take ownership of learning. Example, teacher assesses comprehension during reading and writing activities. So formative assessment means assessment for learning, which is continuous and carried out during lessons. Okay, so during this time, teachers evaluate students through classroom activities, as in like observation, by questioning them, by giving them group work, and also letting them to do the presentation and projects. Okay, so what happened when we imply this formative assessment during classroom section? Okay, so when we apply as a teacher, when we apply this formative assessment in classroom section, we eventually give an ongoing feedback, which means an immediate feedback that which can help the students to improve their learning. For example, okay, the students are doing a group work, right? And then there are something that they lack of. For example, they lack of communication. So when the teacher gave the immediate feedback, as in like you have to discuss together, you are lack of communication skills. They tend to improve that. This is what formative assessment meant to do. So instead of just marks, during the formative assessment, the teachers use performance standards, which to describe the student's level of mastery for each learning standard. For example, the students are doing listening test, and then some students having good band like band one. I mean a band six. Some students have low proficiency band one, so it helps the teacher to understand uh the how to say the progress of each student. They can understand, okay, so the student had progress, which is a good progress. The student raised his band from 3 to 4, and then the student has downgraded. It helps for the teacher to evaluate each student's progress, so the teacher can come up with different teaching methods or personalized teaching methods for the students. Okay, let's go for the next segment. Summative assessment, assessment of learning. Then at the end of term or year to evaluate overall learning outcomes, included exams and written tests now combined with continuous assessment records for balanced results. UPSR abolished in 2021, promoting fair evaluation for all the students. Okay, when we talk about summative assessment, it is quite opposite for formative assessment. Why? Okay, summative assessment is used to evaluate people's learning at the end of the year, at the turn of a year. Okay, which means at the end of the academic year. It may okay, when we talk about end of academic year, right, what comes to your mind? Final year exam, final exams, UPSR, SPM, right? Yeah. So summative assessment is included by written tests, assignments, or performance tasks that tend to happen more likely at the end of the academic year. Okay, unlike in the past, summative results are nowadays are combined with formative assessment, as in like formative assessment as in to provide a more balanced view of people's achievement, just like how we have nowadays in college. Something that, okay, to give an quite a good example. Okay, nowadays we have final year exams, right? For the TESOL, we have final year exams, but we also have projects, something that related to your assessment, right? Assessment records. So it include with the written exams, just like how we include project marks and assignment marks with the final year exams. Okay, so this is what we call as summative assessment. So the abolishment of UPSR that happened during 2021 is also strengthened the role of classroom-based assessment as the main evaluation method in KSSR. Okay, other than that, holistic assessment. Holistic assessment is an assessment that focuses on all round, for example, academic, emotional, social growth, and moral growth. So during this assessment, it helps to develop students' values, attitudes, and also their soft skills. Holistic assessment aims is the main objective. Holistic assessment is to bring a balanced learner who are not only have a good grace, but also someone who is balanced learners as in the aspect of creativity, confident, responsible, and much more. Okay, pentaksiran bilik darjah, which means classroom assessment. Okay, when we talk about this, it's something that related to formative assessment. Yes, because when we talk about band 1, band 6, right? It was meant to happen in classroom assessment. Okay, band 1 is meant to minimal proficiency. Band 6 is meant as excellent proficiency. So when classroom assessment always meant to happen during uh, classroom sections, and it helps to focuses on each student's individual progress and learning pace, where the teacher could enable uh, or track or support the personalized learning for each and every student. That's what we call as PBD. Other than that, we also have two more, which is Pentaksiran Activity Jasmani Sukan dan Curriculum, which means PHASK, and another one is Pentaksiran Psychometric. We call it Psychometric Assessment. Yeah. So what is PHASK? It evaluates people's involvement as in the sports or other co-curricular activities. As for psychometric assessment, it helps to identify people's interests, aptitudes, and personality traits. These both come under holistic development. Okay, what holistic development is under KSSR? So holistic development is goes beyond the academic of to assess. It's not something that just related to academic, as in like summative or formative. Holistic is goes beyond the axis of academics. It helps to personalize, to identify the personality and attitude of students. Holistic development conclude two, just like what I said right now. PHASK, Pentaksiran Activity Jasmani Sukma and Co-curricular. Another one is Pentaksiran Psychometric Assessment. So this help to cultivate their physical and emotional growth, to bring out their co-curricular involvement, to combine cognitive and non-cognitive elements that helps to produce well-balanced and responsible and emotionally stable learners. Okay, changing roles in assessment. What happened when the teacher changed role with the student? Because most of the time when we learn back then, we are passive learners. Okay, as for passive learners, which means we only listen for what teachers are teaching. We just like listen, noting down, listen, noting down, which means there's no direct involvement for the students. Okay, so I mean, in nowadays, we already far past that, which means we change roles in assessment, where teachers shift from examiners to mentors or facilitators, or where students take active roles to peer and self-assessment. What happened during we change roles? During the teacher and student change roles, the teacher will provide ongoing feedback and guidance. And for example, okay, this group, okay, the teacher already gave tasks, right? And then the students were doing together. When they do together, the teacher are monitoring. Okay, they focus. Okay, the students, this group have lack of collaboration, communication. So the teacher will give feedback. So what the students do? The students will adapt to the situation. They're like, okay, so how about we all do this one? You do this one, you do this one, I do this one. Right? You do this, you search for informations. I'll do the slides or cardboard or mind map, something like that. So it helps to promote critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, which is the key component for 21st century skills. So as for the overall impact, when we combine formative, summative, and PVD for fair evaluation, it helps and encourage learner-centered and meaningful assessment. Okay, even though there are few challenges that we still have, as in like teacher workload, subjectivity, but still KSSR marks a major step towards holistic education and in Malaysia. Okay, so this is the pie chart that I get from research in Google. Okay, so most of the time in our classroom, we always use formative assessment. Formative assessment meant to be done in classroom sections, in classroom atmosphere, lessons time, right? As in like band 1 to band 6, when we meant when the teacher changing the assessment rules and everything. So summative always tend to happen at the end of the year. So the how to say the uh, the changes were quite visible here. Okay, and as for the comparative analysis, Okay, comparative analysis shift from KBSR to KSSR framework. KBSR focuses on summative exams as main measure of achievement. KSSR integrates formative, summative, and also continuous feedback. A promote holistic, balanced, and 21st century skills. Okay, so we talk about the differences between assessment under KBSR and KSSR. It is very significant. Why? So under KBSR, assessment was mainly summative, which means focusing on just grades and examinations, test. Okay, so the main goal of the KBSR assessment is to measure what people had learned so far throughout the academic year. Okay, but in contrast, the KSSR framework emphasizes formative assessment, which means where learning is continuous and process and assessment to support improvement. Okay, most of the time, students are more involved in evaluating their own learning through self and peer assessment, making the students become more active learner instead of just passive learning, which means just listening and writing. So when we emphasize the summative learning, I mean formative assessment, the students takes the control, takes the lead, which helps them to become the main uh learners, how to say, the active learners, where the teacher just guides throughout the lesson. Okay, KBSR effectiveness and strengths. Okay, so KBSR effectiveness and strengths provided standardized and comparable, students emphasized academic performance and cognitive mastery, simple to measure, easy for national comparison. Okay, so in this case, okay, when we talk about effectiveness and strength, right? KPSR emphasizes academic performance and cognitive mastery, which means they tend to focus on only on studies, not on other skills. They just focuses on studies. Most of the time, you just learn a lot, and then that's what you imply on your test. It just to focuses on what you have learned throughout the year, throughout the section and everything. And it is very simple and easy for national comparison, for example, UPSR. So when we had UPSR, we had like different cluster schools, like normal schools, cluster schools, sports schools. So it's very easy for us to measure and categorize the students, right? Okay, as for the KPSR weaknesses, overemphasis on exams, memorization, ignored creativity, communication, and social skills, created stress, competition among students, teacher focus on test preparation instead of real understanding. Which are the differences in that what are the weaknesses that we have in KBSR framework? Okay, when during KBSR framework, the students will only focuses on memorization. Okay, for example, as for science, facts memorization. As for what Malay, peribahasa, tata bahasa memorization. As for English, literature memorization, they just focuses on memorization instead of understand what they are supposed to learn from the lesson. And other than that, they also ignore creativity, communication, and social skills because most of the time during KBSR we just focuses on lesson learning environment, right? So and it also can create stress and competition among students because when we had UPSR, we always like, oh, I wanted to get 7A. I wanted to get 7A. I have to be the cluster student. So it tend to bring a lot of stress because most of the parents, teachers put a lot of responsibility on 12 student. You got that? Like, you have to get 7A. Then only you can get a good school. So the students were like, oh my god, I need to get 7A. They get a lot of stress and workload. And also for teacher just focuses on test. Okay, I have to prepare for the test. Oh my god, I have the mid-year is coming up. I need to, mark all the exam papers and I need to prepare all the exam papers instead of just focus on the students whether the students understand or not, they can't focus on that. Because why? Because they have to focus on a lot of test preparation. Okay, as for KSSR effectiveness, promotes continuous student-centered learning, teacher provides ongoing feedback and tailored instruction, reduces exam anxiety with the end of UPSR 2021, encourages skill mastery, critical thinking, and personal growth. Okay, so when we talk about encourage active participation and lifelong learning, we already included holistic assessment, summative assessment, and formative assessment. So what happened when we combined all of them under KSSR? Yes, we let the students to take responsibility. So they were like, okay, so I'm the one who participating because we are not let them just listening to everything and note it down and memorize. We let them to take part, to take the charge, right? So the students were more like, oh my god, I need to do this. So how are we supposed to do this? It helps them to grow their skills, not only academic but also their skills, right? So it's like let them to have that lifelong learning. And other than that, it also helped to reduce the stress and competition because most of the time they were like collaboration skills because we have tasks that let them do as group. So they were like, oh my god, I need to do. Okay, how about you? You do the mind map, I search the facts, and you help me out, right? They come together to do the task, to do the presentation and everything. It helps to stress and reduce stress and competition as well. It also helps to provide meaningful feedback for the progress. How? Because the now instead of just focusing on the preparation of tests, the teacher can focus on the students, can focus on the progress of students or the personalized lesson they have to prepare. So it helps to bring more knowledgeable and students who are full of skills. Okay, as for weaknesses, increased teacher workload from continuous assessment and record keeping, subjectivity and inconsistency in interpreting performance plan, requires ongoing teacher training for effective implementation. Some teachers struggle with assessment literacy and feedback quality. What does that mean? Well, actually, despite the weaknesses, despite the strength, there are also weaknesses in every framework. So does for KSSR. So as for KSSR, the teacher need to do the record keeping. Like every time the teacher done with the lesson, the teacher have to do as in like, okay, you know what? I need to record everything. I need to do the personalized lesson for the students because this student have this issue, this student has this issue. So I need to personalize the lesson so every student can understand. Yes. And it also inconsistency in interpreting performance band requires ongoing teacher training for effective implementation. Some teachers struggle with assessment literacy and feedback quality. Some teachers, mostly the teacher has the one who had a difficulty when it's come to KSSR because the workload it will be increasing. The teacher have to be consistent with the feedback quality. The teacher have to bring out new lessons to make the student engaged and much more. But other than that, despite the weakness, most educators agree that KSSR assessment is more aligned with 21st century educational goals and national philosophy of education. And that's all from my part, and I'm uh, passing the next segment to my co-partner. Thank you.
Sharvin?
So now I'm going to conclusion the overall, which is measurement key is to keep tracking students' learning and progress, which is we need to see how the students progress in their studies, and also help assessment identify strength and weakness, and also Malaysia system involved from road exam KBSR to student centered assessment KSSR. Then KSSR focus on continuous holistic evaluation and 21st century skills. It also reflects a shift toward balanced and meaningful learning assessment. Thank you.
So that's all from us.
Thank you.